Let me switch my machines up here a little bit. It's interesting that the words empathy has been used so much already. It's one of my complaints about Google Glass. It doesn't feel good a lot of times, and it doesn't let me turn it off when I don't need it. It doesn't have a foldable display, for instance. So, at Rackspace, I go around the world and study startups, and I'm pretty lucky in that. And I get to see trends before a lot of other people do. I just came back from Israel and saw sensors that you aim at food and it tells you how much calories it is, or you aim it at an aspirin pill and it tells you what brand it is. It's pretty crazy what's coming really close soon. I'm really honored to be here because this is a point in time that I think we're going to remember the same way that I remember unboxing an Apple II back in 1977. It didn't do a lot back then. And we probably did call it the year of personal computer, even though the personal computer for most people didn't arrive for 15, 20 more years, right? And wearables are the same way. I don't think this is the year of the wearable for the average person. Maybe Apple's watch, if it gets here by Christmas, will get 10 million, 20 million people excited, but it's clearly not going to be where mobile phones are today. But it is an important touch point in history that we're going to look back on because it's going to be an important trend for years. So, about 2 years ago, I started seeing a new trend. I call it contextual software, but it really is 5 separate trends all fusing together. I started seeing new kinds of sensors, like this occipital 3D sensor that goes on an iPad and lets you make a 3D model of the world. I started seeing mobile phones getting more sensors, like fingerprint sensors and barometers. So all of our pockets are going to have many more sensors than we used to in the past. And we started seeing new kinds of wearables. I mean, the guy who started Recon Instruments is there. He makes the compute package that goes inside the Oakley Airwave ski goggle. The goggle tells you where on the mountain you are, how fast you're going, where your kids are, which is all sorts of fun. They don't even have to have the glasses. They just need to have Android or iPhone. On the right is the Epiphany eyewear. So 2 kids out of Stanford are putting a little camera into sunglass frames, which shows just how the computer and how cameras are shrinking every year and getting cheaper and faster. The Basis watch has a heart rate sensor underneath it. Intel just bought that company for more than $100 million. And add on, the third force I was seeing was the amount of data about where we are keeps getting sharper and sharper. I mean, she just mentioned Swarm. I'm using that as well. That's the new Foursquare. But Foursquare and Waze and Navtech and Google Maps and Apple Maps have more and more data about where we are. And that's an important trend, because anytime you see something going up exponentially, you should know that there's business opportunities that you can build on top. Our social world is also exponentially growing. Twitter has more than 500 million tweets a day, and we'll talk about why that's important in a second. And then I started seeing all sorts of new database technologies, including last week I was in Israel. I saw a new kind of security system that looks for anomalies in your databases. But DataSift, for instance, is a data system just to deal with Twitter's firehose feed, right? And I've been seeing all sorts of new innovations because the data center itself is moving from hard drive-based media to SSD-based media. I'm seeing new kinds of in-memory databases that are much, much faster than previous. But all of those 5 things are important, and there's books and there's talks about them. Internet of Things is really the first 2, and big data is the last one. But what I've started seeing a couple of years ago is that they're fusing together, and executives at Google really keyed me in on this. They said, we're building a new contextual operating system. And here's a little hint. How many people have the Moves app? Moves just got bought by Facebook a couple of weeks ago, yeah. Moves, you put it on your iPhone, and it uses the sensors on your iPhone to know whether you're walking, running, biking, or driving. And then it asks you 51 other contexts as you live your life because it still can't figure out those things like skiing or swimming or whatnot. But I'm seeing a new kind of operating system coming to bear in the next few years. Google Glass is showing why we need this. Right now I'm giving a speech. Why would it be showing me messages about Starbucks at this moment in time, right? Why would it be showing me tweets? It should shut up while I'm doing things that I don't need that information. And that means we need a new kind of operating system, a contextual operating system. So where are we starting to see context, and what does it mean for human beings? One, when I went to Oakley and started talking to them about wearable computers, because they make this Oakley the Airwave ski goggle, they said, in the future, everything is going to be highly personalized. Today, if you buy sunglasses, it's the same sunglasses you're wearing. But tomorrow, if you put my Google Glass on, you see my tweets and my stocks and my weather and my airline tickets and data that matters to me. It's very, very personalized. And in the future, your car is going to be personalized this way. Your glasses are going to be personalized this way. Your house is going to be personalized this way, on and on. So let's talk about how. This is a new company called Tap and Go. They are only for college kids right now, so you probably don't know about this company, but they just got $5 million from Vinod Khosla. This thing, if you're at Santa Clara University, you pay for everything on this app. You buy your sandwiches, your coffee, your books, everything. And what it's really doing underneath is surveilling you. It's following you around and starting to notice your patterns of life. Because we all have common patterns. We all go to the same gas station. If we go to church, we go to the same church on Sunday. If we go to school, we go to the same 5 classrooms during the week. If we work, like I do, I work in the same place. I live in the same place. We have a common pattern through life. And if it can study our patterns, then it starts asking you questions like, would you like your normal iced latte today? Because it's 9 o'clock and you just left your dorm room, you crossed a geofence, and we noticed that. And we noticed that every time you cross this geofence, you buy a nice latte because you liked coffee in the morning on the way to history class or whatever. And so it starts serving you. And in a very personal way. I just visited Mercedes R&D lab here in Santa Clara, and they're doing the same thing. They're going to know that your kids are sitting in the car, and therefore it'll suggest different places to eat than if your boss was in the car, for instance. The second thing it means for us is we're getting new kinds of anticipatory services and products. Google Now is a great example of this. The Google Now is looking into my email, into my calendar, even out on the internet, and even at the Internet of Things that are around me. I was giving a talk one time, and Google Now asked if I wanted to take control of the TV that I was projecting on and show some pictures there. For businesses, it means two things as well. We're going to soon, our businesses are going to be forced to see everything about everything. And I didn't really understand this until I went to SRI, a research lab where the internet was developed right down the street. And they had a workstation that studied the eyes, studied the touch, studied everything that I perceived and looked at and wrote and stuff like that. Now, that workstation is for a drone operator, and they were building a database while I worked, and the database was tracking everything I did, everything I looked at, everything I perceived, so that if I killed the wrong person with this drone, they could unroll it and go back and see, did I get the right information on my screen? Did I perceive it? I thought, well, that's sort of science fiction, great for DARPA, but not really useful for us. But in Israel, I saw this company called YouMove that uses a standard camera on your phone to look at your eyes and look at where you're looking on the phone. We are going to soon be in an always surveilled world where things are watching us full time. And that will make us very uncomfortable. We'll talk about that. Uber is a great example of an understand everything company. Uber knows where every piece of inventory is, every transaction, every employee, et cetera, on Travis's mobile phone, the CEO who runs Uber. This is changing how we run our companies, right? At Rackspace and when I worked at Microsoft, I was reviewed every 6 months. Now Uber is rated, the drivers are rated after each drive. And by the way, they're rating you as well. So if you get sick in a car and cause the driver to clean up a car, he's going to give you a 1 star, and you might not get picked up anymore. Think about that. We all are going to have new kinds of digital reputations. Our books, our products are going to have digital reputations. I worked really hard to get reviews on Amazon for that reason, right? The second thing that it's going to mean for businesses is we're going to need to have very deep insights on customers. I live right by the Ritz in Half Moon Bay, and there they have 4 computers that run their Ritz, and they don't talk to each other. So they have I think it's an IBM system that runs the hotel. They have an open table computer that runs the main restaurant. They have a Spa Finder computer that runs the spa. And they have an iPad that runs the so-called cheap restaurant, which isn't cheap because the hamburger's $19. But these things don't talk to each other. And I know they don't talk to each other because when I tweet on the back deck, somebody invariably tweets back at me. So they do have a social media listening team, which is a huge change for companies over 10 years ago. 10 years ago, they didn't have anything like that. But they quickly turn tone deaf when I start tweeting at them, right, and start having a conversation. They don't know where on the property I'm sitting. They don't know what I'm eating. They don't know who I'm with. They don't know my lifetime value as a customer, and on and on and on. And I was talking to the executive team at the Ritz after the book came out, and I said, you're going to be forced to change because the Four Seasons is giving me better service than you are, and they're trying to use technology in ways that you're not yet. And they said, man, Uncle, we know we are investing in joining those 4 computers together. And then they started telling me a story about how the Ritz was invented or started 100 years ago, whenever the Ritz started. When they had only one hotel, they had a room in the middle of the hotel full of index cards. And they would surveil the hell out of you. They would go through your trash. They would, if they noticed you liked steak, every time you came in, they'd write that down. If they noticed your kids had a weird food allergy, they'd write that down. So that the next time you came back, your favorite candy bar would be sitting on your pillow. And you wouldn't even really understand how that happened. But they went through your trash and found a candy wrapper, right? They surveilled the hell out of you, and they don't anymore. And they're going to go back to that old world where they are going to surveil the heck out of you, and we're giving them the data. Let's talk about some of the data that we're giving them. This is a company called Shop Perception. It's using the same sensor that Occipital is using in this, the PrimeSense 3D sensor. The sensor's on top of you. It can see your hand heading toward a box of Cheerios in real time. And they had a screen next to the display. As soon as I touched it, it said, hey, if you bought 3 boxes of Cheerios, we give you 10 points on your loyalty system or something like that. Now, right now, it's mostly being used for analytics to study dwell times and flow patterns and stuff like that. But it's coming that this stuff is going to start studying us in the shopping center. Shelfbucks just last year won Demo God of the Year, Demo God Award at the Demo Conference. They are going to put like 20 of these in a grocery store, and you're going to tap into these displays that they're going to build. And the phone or whatever you're going to tap in with, the Google Glass or whatever, is going to tell you all sorts of stuff about the display. So if we're in the cookie aisle, it's going to say, hey, if you buy 3 Oreos today, you'll get 10 loyalty points. Or hey, you told the internet you wanted to lose weight. Why are you in the cookie aisle? If you're going to be here, at least buy the oatmeal cookies. Don't buy the Oreos anymore. And on. Vintank is a company up here in Napa. They study anytime we say something about wine on social media, right? They're seeing 1.1 million tweets a day about wine. So if we tweet, I love Chardonnay, I'm drinking Sutter Home, whatever, they study you. They're now putting geofences around each of the wineries. So let's say I own Paradox Winery up in Napa. If you know anything about wine, Paradox is about $40 a bottle. And let's say you own Sutter Home. That's about a $10 bottle. And let's say you own Camus, which is about $200. And then you're the partier. You're going to Napa this weekend, and you visit one of these wineries. Let's say you go to Sutter Home, and you tweet, man, I love Sutter Home. I just bought a case of it. And as soon as you walk into my place and cross my geofence, my Google Glass might light up and say, hey, this guy's a $10 bottle of wine guide to take him to your $10 wines. Don't show him your reserve room, right? Yeah. And if you visit Camus before coming and say, I just bought a case at Camus, man, I love their cabs. Well, you're going straight to the reserve room, right? We're going to change how we interact with each other because of these technologies, right? Let's talk a little bit about how. These are called Bluetooth smart beacons. The press likes calling them iBeacons for some reason because Apple has a really good marketing team. But they're actually called Bluetooth smart beacons right now. They used to be called Bluetooth low energy beacons. Whatever you call them, they're little tiny radios that cost about $30 retail, like the Estimotes do in the middle. I've heard them going for as cheap as $5 in quantity. So if you're Walmart and you're going to buy 10,000 of these things, I'm sure you can make a deal with the CEO of Broadcom on the right there. These little radios spit 3 numbers into the air every second, and they run for 2 years on a coin battery. All right, and so there's new products like Tile. Tile hooks onto your keys, and if your kids throw the keys under the couch, you can figure out where they are by using these beacons. Your phone, your Android or iPhone, can see how close it is to one of these beacons. So if you go to the Sacramento Kings stadium, they just put 35 of these beacons around the stadium. So they're thinking about all sorts of new ways to do ticketless entry to the stadium because they know you're there and they know you have a ticket. Your phone knows that, right? So you just walk in and the guy behind the counter can be wearing something like Google Glass. Oh, Robert Scoble just walked in. Yeah, I see him right there. And if you have 3 of these beacons, they can even triangulate on where you are, right? It's not that hard. It's trigonometry. I did that in high school. So we can figure a lot of things out. We can do new kinds of experiences. They're already doing new kinds of contests. If you're in the right part of the stadium, they're going to give you a prize. It'll come right on your mobile phone and say, hey, you just won 2 tickets to the next game. Come pick them up or something like that. They can also change what it means to have a mobile app because now we're going to walk around the stadium and know we're standing in front of a historic spot or know that we're standing right in front of the hot dog vendor, and the hot dog vendor is going to be able to do things on our mobile phone. Hey, would you like that delivered to your seat? Sure. And it probably will know where I'm sitting, right? So all of this new contextual technology, when we fuse these 5 things together, really it's the future of mobile, and really it's the future of augmented reality, right? We're getting a little taste of this if you live in a high urban density neighborhood. These things don't work in my house in Half Moon Bay, right? Uber doesn't pick me up there. Instacart doesn't deliver me groceries there. eBay now, when I work in my studio in San Francisco, if I forget my Apple power supply, I can have a power supply delivered right to me, et cetera, et cetera. Soon we're going to have really deep services that we can get anything delivered to our mobile phone at any time if we're in the right neighborhood. And so that's changing our belief about cities. You know, when I grew up in Silicon Valley, my dad never wanted to live in downtown San Jose or San Francisco because that's where the poverty was, that's where the crime was, that's where the services weren't as good. The really nice Safeways were not in downtown San Jose back then, right? They used to be nice in Los Gatos. And so everybody wanted to live in Los Gatos or in Saratoga or Atherton, right? But now my son says, nah, I don't want to live in the rich boys neighborhood. I want to live where there's a high urban density. I want to live in New York or San Francisco where I can have Uber pick me up and take me home after a party, or where I can have groceries delivered to me, or where I can even talk with my city personnel, the people I elected, to tell them, hey, there's a problem here. So, a lot of people, if I sat down with you, would be asking me, where do I think the world is going? Is it going to be Google Glass style world? Is it going to be a Meta world? How many people went to the Meta party last night? Yeah, was that cool? Yeah. So for those who don't know, Meta is a wearable glass with 2 720p screens and a front-facing 3D sensor, sort of like this PrimeSense sensor, but a different one. And it maps out the world as you look around. So as you look around, it builds a 3D model of the world, and it can lay user interface elements on that world or in front of that world. It can augment the world. The problem is it's a little heavy and it's expensive right now. It's $3,000. So I think that's a few years away before most of us go down that route. Google, with the Glass, tried to take a lower cost approach to it and tried to constrain it. And some would argue it's a little bit too constrained. I wish they had a little bit more augmented reality in the Glass. I've seen kids build games where you shoot aliens coming down from the ceiling with glass, and Google just doesn't seem to be too interested in that use case, and it bothers me. I think I think the two need to merge a little bit. But there's clearly a place for both. You know, I'm playing with all sorts of virtual reality and augmented reality things, and they're a lot of fun for gaming, for entertainment, and for some vertical markets like training. The military's using Oculus Rift for training, or if I'm working at Chevron and I want to fly through an oil field in a new way, I would probably be very interested in the Meta or the Oculus. Glass is a little bit too constrained for those kinds of use cases. The screen's too small, and the power of the computer's too small. But it's going to be a fun new world. I think this world is to come. I don't think it's a 2014 thing for most people. The prices are too high. The utility isn't quite there yet. But clearly, we're at the Apple II point of view. When I give a talk, and we have like 45 seconds to argue about privacy, but most people are really freaked out when I tell them this new world is coming and they're going to be always surveilled in their car, in their shopping centers, in their homes. I mean, a Nest thermostat already knows that I'm home or not because a sensor's watching whether there's movement, and that's going to be a very crude device. Soon we're going to have lots of 3D sensors that are watching us live our lives and are going to do things. And I've already noticed a new kind of digital divide, not between people who can afford technology and who can't, although there is some of that with these new toys, but between people who are all in, like me, and people who are all out. Like, I had dinner with Richard Stallman, and he wears a button say, "Pay cash for everything. Don't use Facebook. Don't use credit cards." You know, how many people here don't use credit cards, by the way? Not a single hand. Yeah. So you guys have already gotten used to giving companies private information, and I think you're going to give more private information to more companies. And let me explain why in a few seconds. I use a thing called TripIt. TripIt's a mobile app that watches my travel behaviors. Yeah, I know. It looks deep into my Google Mail, right? If we had this meeting 15 years ago and somebody would have piped up and said, "You're going to give access to third-party companies to your email," I would have probably said, "You're nuts." But today I give like 15 companies access to my email for different reasons. Anyways, I was sitting in a plane in Chicago coming home, and TripIt said, "Your plane's being canceled. Here's a link to another flight out of town that night." I clicked it. It had my credit card. I bought a ticket. Turns out the pilot came on a minute or two later and said, "Sorry, we're having engine trouble. We don't have a way to fly home tonight, so we're going back to the gate, and you're going to have to deal with our customer service personnel." I got one of 3 seats that night because I'm an all-in guy. Richard Stallman, if he was on that plane, would be sitting in Chicago that night, right? So this industry is going to bring us a lot of utility, but it is going to come at a price of being over the freaky line. And with that, I hope you guys take us way over the freaky line. Thank you very much. What's up?